morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. I love that song too. It always seems to lead into my talk. And it's hard to believe that soon we'll be playing Christmas songs. But it's almost Halloween. So I wanted to talk about Halloween because at this day and age we think about little kids dressing up in costumes and going door to door to get candy, trick-or-treating, or having Halloween parties. So I was looking up the history of Halloween because I felt there's got to be more to it than that. And it was really interesting because you learn about how they perceived spirits back hundreds of years ago, centuries of years ago, and how much we've evolved with the knowledge of spirits as we've become more open to them. And we've learned more about them through our progress in mediumship and the ability to communicate with them. And what better way to learn about them than to actually talk to them. So the history of Halloween, it's really interesting. I could be up here for a couple hours talking about it, but I won't. The word Halloween, it was first used in the 16th century, and it's a Scottish variation of the fuller All Hallows Eve, and that is the night before All Hallows Day. And although the phrase All Hallows is found in Old English, and it means Mass Day of All Saints, All Hallows is not actually seen until 1556. And All Hallows Eve, Halloween, is celebrated in a number of countries all over the world on October 31st. The eve of the Western Christian feast of All Hallows or All Saints, and the day initiating the 3 prayer days of Hallowmas, like Christmas, which is songs and prayers that are performed at Hallowmas shows. Even the Great Pumpkin from the Peanuts comic comes on about this time every year, and it's considered Hallowmas because it's only shown at Halloween time. According to those who have studied Halloween, All Hallows Eve is a Christianized feast started by Western European harvest festivals and festivals of the dead, which may also have pagan roots. And as we know, some of the festive Halloween activities are trick-or-treating and costume parties, and decorating, carving pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns, there's mine, bonfires and apple bobbing, telling scary stories and watching scary movies. The ancient Celtic influences, and this goes way back in the history. Some folklorists feel that Halloween originated in the Roman feast of Pomona, and that's the goddess of fruits and seeds. But it's more linked to the Celtic festival of Samhain, which means summer's end. It's also seen as a time when the souls of the dead and other beings, such as fairies, could easily come into our world. The souls of the dead were said to revisit their homes. The people had feasts where the souls of their dead relatives were summoned to attend. They were all invited, and maybe even set a place for them at the table. But the people also believed the harmful spirits and fairies would also be around, so they took steps to ward off these harmful spirits and fairies, which is thought to be the inspiration of today's Halloween customs. I can't imagine fairies being evil, or Tinkerbell. So to protect themselves, the ancient Celts lit bonfires, which were considered to have protective and cleansing powers and were used in divine rituals, kind of like our Connect, Ground, and Protect that we use today. The practice of the bonfire may have been Christianized with the rise of the observance of Hallowmas. Others say that Halloween bonfires are solely a Christian custom, with fire being used to scare witches off to their awaiting punishment in hell. In parts of Ireland, on the night of Samhain, a man was dressed as a white mare to lead the young house to house to collect food. Christian influences, Halloween falls on the evening before the Christian holy days of All Hallows Day on November 1st and Souls Day on November 2nd, thus giving the holiday of October 31st. These 3 days are referred to as Hallowmas and are the time for honoring the saints and prayers for the recently departed souls who have yet to reach heaven. And All Saints was started in the year 609, but was actually celebrated on May 13, 835, and then it was switched to November 1st. By the end of the 12th century, as we're moving up, all across Europe they had become holy days of obligation and took in traditions such as ringing church bells for the souls of purgatory. Souling, which is the custom of baking and sharing soul cakes for all christened souls, may have been the origin of trick-or-treating. This custom was found in parts of England and goes as far back as the 15th century. The groups of poor people, mostly children, would go door to door on All Saints or All Souls Day, collecting soul cakes as a means of prayer for souls in purgatory. And then similar practices were found in parts of Italy. It was believed that the souls of the dead wandered the earth until All Saints' Day and All Hallows' Eve to provide them one last chance for them to gain vengeance on their enemies before moving on to the next world. So in order for the living to avoid being recognized by any soul that might be seeking such vengeance, they would wear masks or costumes to disguise their identities. Some have suggested the carved jack-o'-lantern originally represented the souls of the dead. In Britain, these customs were under attack during the Reformation, as some Protestants criticized purgatory as a popish or popish, which is an offensive term meaning related to the Roman Catholic Church. But they felt the doctrine was incompatible with the concept of predestination. But there were other Protestants who continued to follow these customs, especially lighting of candles and ringing of the church bells in memory of the dead. And then from 1605 onward, the Halloween traditions became more suitable for the holiday, and like Christmas became Halloweenmas. It gradually spread to North America, but there was no indications it was really celebrated during the 18th or 19th century. It was during the immigration of the Irish and Scottish during the 19th century where it was seriously brought to North America. The Puritans of New England held a strong opposition to Halloween. Now moving up to the 20th century, it was being celebrated coast to coast by people of all social, racial, and religious backgrounds. In Poland, on Halloween, believers are taught to pray out loud while they walk through the forest to help comfort the souls of the dead. In Judaism, they're not permitted to participate in what they consider Gentile customs, but many American Jews do celebrate it as a non-religious holiday. Symbols, we have a lot of those, they develop gradually over time. We have our jack-o'-lantern. They were carried by geysers, and those are the ones that dressed in costume. They were carried on All Hallows Eve to frighten evil spirits. Isn't he frightening? In Ireland and Scotland, they used turnips until they immigrated to North America, and they found the pumpkin a little softer, a little easier to carve than the turnip. The grotesque faces were carved to represent spirits or goblins. The American tradition of carving pumpkins is recorded in 1837 and was originally associated with harvest time. Today's image of Halloween comes from many sources, such as national customs from all over the world, works of Gothic and horror literature like Frankenstein and Dracula, horror movies, Frankenstein and The Mummy. Back in 1780, there was a Scottish poet, John Mayne, who made a note of it in some of his poems. Also, supernatural associated with the night, the boogeyman, which influenced Robbie Burns, the poet, in his poem, Halloween, 1785. The autumn season also provides symbols for Halloween, such as our pumpkin, corn husks, scarecrows, and homes are quite often decorated with some of these, especially for Halloween. Some other themes of Halloween are death and evil, the occult, mythical monsters, and zombies. Zombies aren't real? I'll never look at Walking Dead the same. I love that show. That's based on an old comic book. And this is the time we see horror movies running every night for a week or two before Halloween. Trick-or-treating or guising. Trick referring to threats to do mischief on the homeowners or their properties if they don't get a treat. So we'll know what houses don't give treats because there's toilet paper all over the place. In Scotland and Ireland, recorded as early as 1895, children wore costumes and went door to door for food or coins, carrying lanterns made out of their scooped out turnips. The ones that were more apt to play tricks or pranks on your house were the ones that dressed in the more evil costumes. Guising at Halloween in North America was first recorded in 1911 in a newspaper in Kingston, Ontario, where it was reported children were guising around the street. Other symbols, witches and black cats. Witches were usually women who practiced natural medicine with herbs and spices. But every Halloween, we always see the picture of the witch dressed in black and her broom and the big black cauldron boiling eye at newt. And beside her, the dreaded evil black cat. Actually, they're good pets. They're not bad omens, but unfortunately they're associated with Halloween. And there was a newspaper article, someone else. It was in our local paper, but it was a reporter named Kristen Callis who writes, "I think associating black cats with Halloween and bad luck should be expired like last year's candy. In ancient Egypt, cats, including the black ones, were well loved and praised for being the good little hunters they are when it comes to controlling vermin. But they were much more than that, too. In fact, there was even a cat goddess named Bast, that's B-A-S-T, representing protection, fertility, and motherhood. And cats were so much loved that when they died, they were often mummified. In parts of Great Britain and Japan, cats are considered good luck. But in Western history, these poor things have been given a bad rap, as she says. They're looked upon as a symbol of bad luck or evil omens, and specifically have been associated with witches. So if you go into an animal shelter where they have cats, you will see that black cats outnumber any other color. And if you're able to go in where they're running loose, you'll find that all these black cats come running up to you, crying out for a home, just as much as any other colored cat or furry child of God. She also told not only are black cats associated with bad luck, but they're not as photogenic. I don't know. I'm not a photographer, but I have a black cat, and I think these are worth a couple of ahs.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just being biased, but it's an old superstition that's been passed down by history, like a lot of the superstitions that some people still follow, the number 13. So the study of Halloween, it shows the difference of how we look at spirit today than when they did back then, how much we've progressed on learning about them and loved ones who have crossed over, to be able to communicate with them. It's amazing, and to learn more what it's like when you cross over. How else would we know if we didn't communicate with them? They're not evil, they're not looking for revenge. So this Halloween, have a spiritual Halloween. Be safe, be not afraid. Welcome the good spirits into your home. Hug a black cat, even if it's just in thought. And if you're giving out Halloween kisses, make sure they're the healthy ones. So have a good Halloween and God bless.